Mother is a 1989 Japanese role-playing video game developed by Ape and published by Nintendo for the Famicom. The game is modeled on Dragon Quest series gameplay but is set in a late 20th century United States, unlike its fantasy genre contemporaries. Mother follows the young Ninten as he uses his great-grandfather's psychic powers to fight hostile, formerly animate objects and other enemies. The game uses random encounters to enter a menu-based, first-person perspective battle system. It is the first game in the Mother series. Writer and copywriter Shigesato Itoi pitched the game concept to Shigeru Miyamoto when visiting Nintendo for other business. Though Miyamoto denied the proposal at first, he eventually gave Itoi a development team. The game was released in Japan on July 27, 1989. A North American version was localized into English but abandoned as commercially unviable. A copy of this prototype was later found and circulated on the Internet as EarthBound Zero. Reviewers noted the game's similarities with the Dragon Quest series and its simultaneous parody of the genre's tropes. They considered the game's sequel, EarthBound, very similar and a better overall implementation of Move-era Shigeru-esque gameplay ideas. Critics also noted the game's high level of difficulty and issues of balance. Mother sold 150,000 copies and received a Silver Hall of Fame score from Japanese reviewer Weekly Famitsu. Jeremy Parish of OneUp.com wrote that Mother importantly generated interest in video game emulation and the historical preservation of unreleased games. The game was later re-released in Japan on a single cartridge, 2001 Mother 1+2 for the Game Boy Advance. Mother has not received an official English language or North American release. Gameplay. Mother is a single-player, role-playing video game set in a slightly offbeat, late 20th century United States. The game eschews traits of its Japanese role-playing game contemporaries. It is not set within the fantasy genre and only enters science fiction for its final sequence. The player fights in warehouses and laboratories instead of in standard dungeons. Instead of swords, assault weapons, and magic, the player uses baseball bats, toy guns, and psychic abilities. The game's protagonist, Ninten, is about 10 years old. Like the Dragon Quest series, Mother uses a random encounter combat system. The player explores the overworld from a top-down perspective and occasionally enters a first-person perspective battle sequence where the player chooses attack options from a series of menus. On their turn, the player selects between options to fight, guard, check enemy attributes, run away, use items, or use offensive, defensive, or healing psychic powers. The player can also set the battle on autopilot with the auto option. Critical hits register with the series' signature smash text and sound. The player can press a button to have Ninten check, or talk with nearby people, animals, and objects. The game shares similarities with its sequel, EarthBound. There is a game save option through using a phone to call Ninten's father, an option to store items with Ninten's sister at home, and an automated teller machine for banking money. The members of Ninten's party are all visible on the overworld screen at once, and are analogous to EarthBound Shigeru's party members in style and function. Move-era Shigeru's world map does not keep locations separate, and instead connects all areas. The game's story begins as Ninten receives a music box in the journal of his great-grandfather, who studied psychic powers nearly a century earlier. Ninten is attacked by household items, and ventures outside to find a crazy world with hostile everyday objects and other odd events. Plot: Mother begins with the story of a young, married, American couple who mysteriously vanish from their small, rural town. 2 years later, the husband, George, returned as mysteriously as he vanished, and began a strange study in complete seclusion. His wife, Maria, was never heard from again. Years later, in 1980, a young American boy named Ninten is attacked at home in a paranormal event. His father explains that Ninten's great-grandfather studied psychic powers, and asks Ninten to investigate a crisis occurring across the world, the work of an invading alien race. Ninten is then warped to the world of Magicant, where the land's ruler, Queen Mary, asks Ninten to find her song, the 8 melodies, and play them for her. Ninten returns to Earth and befriends a young boy, Lloyd, who is being teased at an elementary school. The two travel to the town of Snowman to deliver a lost hat to Anna, a young girl with psychic powers. Anna tells Ninten she saw him in a dream, and joins the party in hopes of finding her missing mother. After finding most of the melodies, Ninten is harassed at a karaoke bar by Teddy, the boss of a local gang. Teddy surrenders after losing to Ninten in a duel, and joins Ninten's party with the intent to avenge the deaths of his parents, who were killed at Holy Lowly Mountain. Lloyd stays behind. In a cottage at the base of Holy Lowly Mountain, Anna pulls Ninten aside and asks him to be with her always. The two dance and profess their mutual love. When about to leave, the party is attacked by a powerful robot that knocks out the entire party. Lloyd arrives with a tank and destroys the robot, but accidentally attacks the party and critically wounds Teddy, so Lloyd rejoins the party. They take a boat out on Holy Lowly Lake and a whirlpool pulls them into an underwater laboratory where they find a robot who claims to have been built by George to protect Ninten. When the laboratory floods, they leave for the mountain and the robot helps them ascend. On the way, they find a cave with human prisoners including Anna's mother. They need to defeat the mother ship to free the prisoners. Another robot attacks at the summit, and George's robot is sacrificed in the struggle. Ninten learns the final melody at the mountain's summit. The party is warped to Magicant, where Ninten sings the 8 melodies to Queen Mary. She recalls the rest of the song and reminisces about an alien named Giike that she loved as her own child. Queen Mary reveals that she is George's wife, Maria, and vanishes. Magicant, a mirage created by her conscience, vanishes with her. The party is warped back to the top of Holy Lowly Mountain, where the party discovers George's grave. Large rocks block the entrance to a cave inside Holy Lowly Mountain, but are cleared by the power of Maria's conscience. The party encounters the mother ship and a fluid-filled tank that contains Giike. The alien expresses its gratefulness to Ninten's family for raising it, but explains that George stole vital information from its people that could have been used to betray them, and proceeds to accuse Ninten of interfering with their plans. Giike offers to save Ninten alone if he boards the mother ship. When Ninten declines, Giike attempts to put Ninten to sleep. The party begins to sing the 8 melodies while Giike tries to quiet the party through an attack. When the party finishes the lullaby, Giike is overcome with emotion at the thought of Maria's motherly love. Giike says they will meet again and flies off in the mother ship. The game ends with Ninten, Anna, and Lloyd facing the player as the credits roll behind them. Development. Mother was developed by Ape and published by Nintendo. While visiting Nintendo for other work, copywriter Shigesato Itoi pitched his idea for a role-playing game set in contemporary times to the company's Shigeru Miyamoto. He thought the setting would be unique for its incongruence with role-playing genre norms, as daily life lacked the pretense for magic powers and they could not simply give the child characters firearms as weapons. Itoi's project proposal suggested how the natural limitations could be circumvented. Miyamoto met with him and praised the idea, though he was not sure whether Itoi could pull it off. As an advertiser, Itoi was used to concept proposals preceding the staffing process, but Miyamoto explained that video game concepts needed people who signed on to make the product. Itoi was overcome with powerlessness. Miyamoto was also hesitant to work with Itoi at a time when companies were pushing major celebrity product endorsements, as Itoi's involvement would be for such a game. When the two met next, Miyamoto brought the documentation from a text-adventure game and told Itoi that he would have to write similar documentation himself. Miyamoto said that he knew from his own experience that the game would only be as good as the effort Itoi invested, and that he knew Itoi could not invest the appropriate time with his full-time job. Itoi restated his interest and reduced his workload, so Miyamoto assembled a development team. Upon assessing for compatibility, they began production in Ikikawa, Chiba. Itoi had said earlier that he wanted his work environment to feel like an extracurricular club consisting of volunteers and working out of an apartment, which Miyamoto tried to accommodate. Itoi wrote the game's script and commuted from Tokyo, a process he found exhausting. Even with asking Itoi to prioritize the development process, Miyamoto received criticism of acquiescing to celebrity and of hiring a copywriter not up for the task. Miyamoto said that his decision to pursue the project was based on his confidence in Itoi. Mother was released in Japan on July 27, 1989 for the Famicom North American release. The game was scheduled for localization into the English language for a North American release as EarthBound, but was abandoned when the team chose to localize Mother 2 instead. Critics noted in retrospect that the game's release would have been a waste of money if launched as planned alongside the acclaimed Final Fantasy III on an outdated console in a niche genre. Years later, a version of the completed, original Mother localization was found and uploaded to the Internet, where it became known as EarthBound Zero. The unreleased localization featured tweaks to the original Japanese version. As of 2014, Mother has not received an official North American release. Music. The game's soundtrack was composed by Kiichi Suzuki and Hirokazu Tanaka and recorded in Tokyo, London, and Bath. It was released as 11 tracks on a CBS Sony Records compact disc on August 21, 1989. The album contained mostly vocal arrangements in English and was likened by a PGFAN reviewer Patrick Gann to compositions by the Beatles and for children's television shows. He found the lyrics cheesy and trite, but appreciated the simple statements' innate melodies, and the quirky and wonderful magicant. Only the last song on the album is in chiptune. Gann ultimately recommended the 2004 remastered release over this version. The game's soundtrack contains several tracks later used in subsequent series games. Reception and Legacy. Mother received a Silver Hall of Fame score of 31/40 from Japanese reviewer Weekly Famitsu. Reviewers noted the game's similarities with the Dragon Quest series and its simultaneous parody of the genre's tropes. They thought the game's sequel, EarthBound, to be very similar and a better implementation of Muth-era Euro-esque gameplay ideas. Critics also noted the game's high difficulty level and balance issues. Mother sold 150,000 copies. Jeremy Parish of UseGamer described the game as a mild-mannered parody of the role-playing game genre, specifically the Dragon Quest series. He noted that Mother, like many Japanese role-playing games, emulated the Dragon Quest style, the windowed interface, first-person perspective and combat, and graphics, but differed in its contemporary setting and non-fantasy story. Parish commented that Atlus's 1987 Digital Devil story, Megami Tensei, was similarly set in the modern day, though it devolved into science fiction and fantasy in ways Mother did not. He added that the game has a sense of wonder and magic realism. In the context of childhood imagination, as Ninten can feel more like someone pretending to be a Dragon Quest-style hero than a hero in his own right. Parish said this makes the player wonder which game events are real and which are Ninten's imagination. Parish cited Itoi's interest in entering the games industry to make a satirical role-playing game as proof of the genre's swift 5-year rise to widespread popularity in Japan. Cassandra Ramos of Rip Gamer praised the game's graphics and music, and considered it among the console's best, with rich, nicely detailed visuals, Peanut-style characters, and simple but effective audio. In contrast, she found the battle sequences aesthetically pretty bland, and, otherwise, the game's least interesting aspect. Overall, she found Mother surprisingly complex for its time, and considered its story superior to its sequel. She especially recommended the game for EarthBound fans. Parish credited Itoi for the game's vision and compared his ability and literary interests with American author Garrison Keillor. Parish felt that Itoi's pedigree as a writer and copywriter was well suited for the space-limited, 8-bit role-playing game medium, which privileged Mother ahead of other games written by non-writers. UseGamer Euro-S Parish noted how the game's non-player characters would contemplate the profound and trivial instead of reciting the active plot. He added that the game's lack of an official North American release has bolstered the reputation and revere of its immediate sequel. While Parish said Muth-era Euro-S script was as sharp as EarthBound Euro-S, he felt that the original's game mechanics did not meet the same level of quality. Mother lacked the rolling HP counter, and non-random encounters for which later entries in the series were known. Parrish also found the game's balance to be uneven, as the statistical character attributes and level of difficulty scaled incorrectly with the game's progression. Rose-Colored Gaming, a company that made custom reproductions of the NES cartridge, noted that the Japanese releases was more challenging than the unreleased English localization. Gamera Shigeru Ramo similarly found balance issues, with a high amount of battles, difficult enemies, reliance on grinding, and some oversized levels. Parrish wrote earlier for OneUp.com that in comparison to EarthBound, Mother is worse in just about every way, a clone where its sequel was a satirical deconstruction of RPGs. He wrote that the game's historical significance is not for its actual game but for the interest it generated in video game emulation and the preservation of unreleased games. Mother was re-released in Japan as the single cartridge Mother 1+2 for the Game Boy Advance in 2001. This version uses the extended ending of the unreleased English prototype, but is only presented in Japanese. Starman.net hosted a Mother 25th Anniversary Fan Fest in 2014 with a live stream of the game and plans for a remixed soundtrack. Later that year, fans released a 25th Anniversary Edition ROM hack that updated the game's graphics, script, and gameplay balance. Notes and references. Notes. References. External links, official website.